Okay, welcome to 1000 Ways to be a Champion for Children. This show, if you're not familiar with it, it's about reducing the impact of adverse childhood experiences. If we get that right, if we reduce the impact of adverse childhood experiences, we see people have a lot better lives, a lot better health, a lot better ability to have good relationships, a lot better ability to be good parents and good fathers and good community builders. So that's what reducing adverse childhood experience is about. I am a champion for children, and I have a champion for children with me, Trevor Brown. Trevor Brown is the executive director of Lethbridge Youth Foundation. Trevor, tell us what you do. Most people would say Fifth on Fifth. They wouldn't know Lethbridge Youth Foundation, right? Tell us about the programs and the services that you do and how it impacts youth.
Lethbridge Youth Foundation, Fifth on Fifth Youth Services is a project of the Lethbridge Youth Foundation. That's our overall body. The original concept was to be able to create more branches underneath as necessary, and that's some of the things that we're exploring for the future. But currently, we've just went through a major expansion in our programs, and we have it's under the Youth Employment and Skills Strategy, and our programs are generally split into classroom-based programs, individual supports, and then work experiences. And so in our classroom programs, we have our Forward Life Impact, which is a 6 to 8 week class. They do job skills, interviewing, life skills. We bring in different community resources. We really try to help young people with a holistic way of looking at employment, and we really want to focus on teaching people how to find a job, not necessarily just having a whole bunch of placements, ready to go that youth aren't just interested in. We really want to try to line youth up to the direction that they want to head in their lives.
You get the right fit for their skill set and what the jobs are. Yeah, makes good sense. Exactly. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So this class is a 6 to 8 week class, and then they have an optional work experience on top of that as well. And so that could be up to 12 weeks, 360 hours. What that does is it gets connected to different employers that are interested in taking on a work experience with the objective that they're going to stay on employed afterwards. But we basically are able to subsidize the employers the equivalent of minimum wage. They just have to pay for the MERCs, the mandatory employment related costs, which equates to about 12 to 15%, depending upon the business. But they're able to take on a young person and get reimbursed for the wages to help young people get a foothold into the economy. And the work experiences go across all of our programs. Any one of our programs, youth could have access to a work experience if it's a good fit for the employer and for the participant that we're working with. We just launched 2 new programs for our classroom programs. We recognize that there's different needs for different populations, part of the demographics. And we tried a group of newcomers to Canada on our previous Forward Life Impact program. And we realized that there was things that we needed to do change as an organization to help them be more successful. And so we actually just developed an 11-week program. So during the time in all of our classes, while youth are attending, they get paid a stipend equal to minimum wage. So it helps them, cover their life costs without that being the burden. We try to remove as many barriers from their experience as possible, so that they can commit, they can get the most out of this time, and then be on a better playing field when they're entering the workforce. Inside the newcomers program, we do a lot of language development. We recognize that a lot of, especially refugees that have come from all different areas of the planet, they come, and the younger ones have a lot of opportunities where they're integrating in the schools and they're able to learn the language a lot quicker. But when you have a large family and there's the older youth that are in the family, often they are on that cusp where they're ESL is pretty much, or English as a second language courses are pretty much where they're heading, and the high school diploma might not be, as opportunistic for them, and so window of what opportunity really becomes less and less and less. And so we really wanted to make sure that we were providing supports for them, so that they could be successful and feel integrated and included in our community, and looking at where their skills are, because they come with lots of different skills from where they're from. And if we can capitalize on that as a community, we all win, which is really important.
Now, sometimes there's sorry, Trevor, just to interject one thing. Sometimes there's a big challenge between the skill sets that people come to our country with and their ability to use those skills, right? Because of all of the certification and those kind of things. Is there any movement to make that flow better, to be more, to more fully utilize the talents of these newcomers to Canada?
Well, we're because often we're focused more on the youth population, so 15 to 30. A lot of the part of the population that we're working with right now is the younger part of that demographic. But as a community, I think that there's always opportunity to address this, and you're always hopeful that the types of equivalencies that can be put forward as a society, whether that's provincially or nationally, to be able to help integrate people with high skill sets better than just being or feeling like they have to be in service jobs, if they're, there's the joke of Toronto, right? It's best place to give birth is in a taxi, because there's lots of immigrants that, come from
doctors. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that was, so we really want to focus on helping the young people gain some of the skills and trainings that will help them be successful, while learning some of the language along the way, the employment language along the way. And then our third classroom-based program is we're just actually starting it. It's we're doing our intakes tomorrow. Is our Indigenous employment program, and what we recognized is that we just put it out for our initial catchment to do a recruitment for this program, and we had an overwhelming response, and we actually have a number of people on the wait list, which is great as an agency, but it's really it's a sobering reality for Lethbridge and for a lot of our young Indigenous youth and their employment opportunities. So we really wanted to focus on, in this one, based on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, in ensuring equitable access to employment for Indigenous youth, but also in recognizing and valuing cultural experiences. There's a bumping up of world views and world experiences between Indigenous and the westernized culture, and it's those moments around cultural activities that we really want to bring an awareness and a value to from both ends of the spectrum. So from what we want to do with employers is also invite them out when we go do cultural activities like sweats, or potentially go out to the Sundance, or do a teepee raising, do some land-based learning, all those kind of things that are just that we have the opportunity to really respect and value if we're open to seeing the skill set that exists within that, which is, I think, is really important. So and all those programs have all the different life skills and employment related skills like attached to it in how we do our classes, and then, like I said, they have the work experience as well.
Yeah. So just to kind of tag on one thing you said, as you know, adverse childhood experiences, the bigger the number of the adverse childhood experiences, if they don't get resolved or handled in some way, lead to some very negative consequences. One of them being suicide, right? Kids with 6 or more ACE scores are 1,221% likely to commit suicide without getting the support and care that they need. And you have some experience in that matter when you're a younger man.
Yep. Yeah, that's actually what pointed me in the direction of doing youth work. When I was a teenager, I never thought that suicide, of course, would impact my life. Went through my own experiences, with depression and challenges. But I ended up having a friend take his life when I was 16, and I also had another friend that I was quite intimately involved with his suicide attempt, and his first suicide attempt, and that really changed the course and direction of my life. At that point, I was planning. I was in school with a full scholarship at the University of Lethbridge for in biochemistry. On my way to dentistry was my goal, and I just, after all those experiences, and a number of others, I realized that wasn't where my life was heading anymore. And it took me to travel all the way across the world to Africa, and then backpack across Europe as well, to really recognize and have an awakening of, I want to do something more for my community and for my province and where I'm from. And I need to confront the challenges. And some of the big ones are the social issues that I had to deal with, both from experiences with bullying and experiences with suicide. And so that's what I started. My first company was Operation Humanity. And my goal was to change the focus on how we viewed capitalism, and I called it humanitarian capitalism. And I wanted to bring my services to lots of different communities that might not have equitable access to different types of speakers, and then work with young people across the province to help them empathize better with the human experience, understand the social issues, realize that there's opportunities to communicate about it, address mental health, concerns, and the importance of talking about this, because with my first friend's suicide, that took me completely by shock. I was, I had worked out with him the day before, nothing was wrong. He gave me the CD that we had always worked out to, and then the next day I never saw him. So it was a sad reality, but it really made me recognize why opening conversations with youth about challenging topics is important, and it's actually will help young people ask for help better, and acknowledge what's going on for them before it's too late.
Yeah, you bet. Like, we definitely want to be. That's a part about the whole Dr. Dr. Bruce Perry. You're familiar with him? Like, he's like a genius, right? And he talks about all the time in terms of the intervention. Just one caring adult in a young person's life could make the whole difference in their life, of one, not committing suicide, but two, of just having a better life and being able to deal with trauma that they might still be experiencing. We had a guest on here, his name Dr. Greg Williams, and he was abused for a decade with his father. And his uncle and auntie, who didn't even know anything about it, saved his life, just because they would go and say, "Hey, Greg, and good to see you." And so they were like two caring adults in his life that allowed him to kind of, temper that other abuse, or manage that other, terrible shit he was going through, in terms of making life worthwhile. So, So when a lot of your focus on here now is on employment, and how important is employment for youth?
Well, I think it's important as from a societal level, just to keep for all of us to feel like we're able to have means to survive, means to be able to provide for ourselves, and to be able to participate fully into the community through the ways that make us happier in life. I always kind of focused on two major questions in my life. Were you able to find happiness, and were you able to share that happiness with others? And I think that, when we talk about employment, is, that gives us something where we can create, so we can generate some wealth for us, we can generate a good income stream, and that can not only just reach a point of sustaining us, just with the basics, but can help us integrate better into the community, and, and find passions that we maybe didn't know were there. And see for instance, last 2 years ago, I joined Taekwondo, because I wanted to join with my daughter, and so getting to be able to do that as a daddy-daughter experience, but that's not something I would have necessarily sought out in my life, but I found so much value, and through this pandemic, it's definitely opened my eyes to how much I miss it. And I wouldn't have had that experience without the opportunity to be able to cover those costs. And so going back to your question, is why is it important for youth? I think youth have they're going to be the leaders of the future. I mean, that's the cliche that we always talk about, but the reality is that if we aren't preparing them for the realities of the economy, the realities of the changing world views and direction in technology, then we won't have a strong youth workforce. So investing in young people to ensure that they have equitable access to the workforce, I think, is really important for them.
Yeah, no kidding. And even just for all of us, I think, all almost all of us, anyways, work is an important thing in terms of the connections we have with our coworkers, in terms of what we're trying to do, and the connection we have with the people that we're serving through our employer agency, wherever we're engaged in. Right? Then those are our connections. Those are parts that really kind of enhance our existence as well, that we're of value to somebody else in that process, right? But I think you would agree with that. So,
Absolutely, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Hey, when we're talking about the First Nations program, the new program that you have, and obviously with ACEs, and ACEs we know is a huge problem. We want to address, want to make it better, want to minimize the ACEs to maximize the health and value of the individuals and the health and value of our collective community. But First Nations people, we are on the grounds of the ancestral home of the Blackfoot people, and for 150 years we tried to beat the culture out of them for 6 generations, right? So that trauma is like magnified with our First Nations folks, and of course, because of that, what do we see? More suicides than with the First Nation folks than anybody else. More homelessness, more addiction, right? Those kind of things are if you do the math, if you look at the ACEs science, that's what they say is going to happen, right? So programs that help our First Nation kids get work, and that they have some meaning and purpose and value in their life, and they can afford the things that they want to have the best life, is very important. How is this new program? How is it culturally? What would you call it? Culturally relevant, or culturally, how do you know it's going to resonate with First Nations people?
Well, we really tried to take a humbling approach in how we designed the program. Same thing as when we did the newcomer one too. Is we wanted to go to the people with the newcomers one. We did a series of focus groups and had them kind of describe to us what their needs are to help us understand how we can best meet them through the program. And then when we shared the program of what we wanted to do or what our ideas were, it was so synchronistic to where their goals were. With the Indigenous program, we really tried to, like I said, come at it from a humble place. We hired a consultant to do a research paper for us and reach out to community members and get a wider cross-section of in-depth interviews. And we definitely heard a lot of key things, a number of employers that are very great employers to work for, and that we really want to continue encouraging and helping them be more successful in their hiring. And then there's, in different ways of how we can help other employers, become better, create more inclusion and diversity in their workforce. So in the design of it, on the cultural piece of it, we really wanted to listen to the elders tell us what would be really valuable. So we have in our first 11 weeks, we have 10 different of our community elders coming in and going to integrate in different aspects of our program. One of the things that we heard a lot of was, the land-based learning opportunities, opportunities to do sweats or TP raising, this smudging. I mean, just sometimes simple things that are, from an Indigenous perspective are just a way of life. It's the normal day-to-day experiences, but to be able to bring that and show appreciation and acceptance in the workplace as well with that, that's really where we focused on, is trying to listen to the people and listen to young people as well as the elders in guiding us in how we could best make this program fit for our youth.
Cool. I think you might find this interesting. Dr. Bruce Perry, and a Blackfoot leader, I can't remember her first name, but Spear Chief is her last name. They are doing a session on adopting traditional Blackfoot ways as a means to reduce ACEs and reduce trauma and help healing and resilience. And it's coming up April 2nd. I just registered for it today. Just like, hallelujah, that's pretty interesting. So, yeah,
That's
yeah.
cool. Is it
I'm very
a webinar? Is that what
yeah,
they're
it's a two-day webinar or training course, and that's exactly what it's on is. And I kind of had a little bit of I've been talking something similar. I'm not Bruce Perry; he's amazing. But I was talking about because in the Brain Story certification course, they had quite a thing on First Nation ways in terms of child development, and it was like when I read Dr. Perry's book, The Boy Who Was Raised a Dog, I looked at it and said, I remember this from that course, and I see what Bruce Perry is talking about here. These seem to be the same thing, and here they're having this thing. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be an amazing thing that perhaps we can engage our Blackfoot brothers and sisters to get a solution that works for all of us. I mean, that'd be fantastic.
I know that, like, I did a lot of I started going out to standoff when I was about 15 years old through a lot of the youth work the youth panel work that I was starting to be involved in.
The youth panel was provincial panel. Is that what it was?
Yeah, that was a provincial panel.
Yeah, and that was when you were 15 or 16 years old.
I was when I was 15, I started doing some like conferences out on the different areas. And then when I was 17, I sat on the provincial youth advisory panel. And that's where I spent a lot of time going out there and developing relationships with the Kainai Youth Council. A good friend of mine, Tony Delaney, he's now on Chief and Council. Really excited to see somebody who I knew as a teenager stepping up on a political level and trying to make change happen for his community. Something that was just so simple. Him and his grandfather, they work in the restorative justice lens, and they work a lot with people who are incarcerated. And one of the things that they did, and I really appreciate Tony's experience on this, is they wanted to introduce the swearing in on a feather, on an eagle feather. And so when you go into the courthouse, as you're sworn in for to tell the truth, you can choose the Bible, you can choose a eagle feather as well. So it's symbolic to the community, and it definitely makes you feel more, or at least from what I've been told from Tony, is it helps a lot of the people who are going through things feel like that they're part of something, and it's not just another adverse experience, that they're having to go through. There's an indigenization of the court system, and now that philosophy has, I believe, from last conversation I had with Tony, all the courts in Alberta actually offer that as an option available for a person that's appearing in court. So
cool. Something more familiar with them, something more relevant for them and their culture and the way they were brought up. Yeah. Cool. That's interesting. So.
Yeah, and I gained a real passion and appreciation for spending time in Indigenous cultures, and the Blackfoot have been very welcoming and engaging with me, and I'm very grateful for all the experiences that I've got as a young person. I've done a lot of sweats. I spent a lot of time out at Indian Days on Kainai. There's been a lot of collaboration work. We are in our program. We're going to be doing a blanket exercise next week, the week after. So just, opportunities for us to just have a deeper awareness of the experiences that other people go through. And, when we talk about, adverse childhood experiences, one of the speakers that I like to listen to a lot is Dr. Gabor Mate, and one of his quotes is, paraphrasing is isn't it sad that the people who are traumatized the most, we keep on re-victimizing and re-traumatizing them on the street again. And and that to me is such a when we can understand and empathize with the experience. It doesn't mean we necessarily agree with certain behaviors, but if we can open our minds and open our hearts to what somebody has experienced in their life and see the opportunity rather than the issue, and treat people with kindness and compassion, I think we, as a community, we'd be way better off.
Oh yeah, for sure. If the question was what has happened to you, is kind of a good place to start, kind of a thing, in terms of like why are you like this? What has happened to you? Like, that's kind of, I think, is what Gabor Mate, I'm a big fan of his. He's pretty amazing, eh? He also says that everybody who is an addict has suffered abuse in their life. Not everybody who suffered abuse is an addict, but everybody who is an addict has suffered abuse.
Yeah.
And I took a online course about addiction a month ago with him, and it was amazing because it was just basically he would bring up audience members and then have a conversation. They said, "Oh, I don't think I really had any abuse, blah blah blah, that kind of thing." And then he started asking them questions about their childhood, and of course, kids, if they're in a situation where mom and dad are yelling or mom and dad are angry or there's fists are connecting, any of those kind of things, the kid believes they did it. The kid believes it's their fault, right? That all of this is falling apart, right? And can you imagine holding on to that, to believe that you were you were responsible somehow for your mom getting beat up by your dad? Like, that would be, but that's the reality of it. That's how ACEs, at the point they happen, right, is so traumatic an experience. So yeah. Yeah.
And a couple of the other research ones that I've been really appreciative of learning, and I don't know if you're familiar with, but the 40 developmental assets through the Search Institute. Are you familiar with that? The work
I have seen it. Yeah, I'm not. I can't say I'm an expert on it by any means. But go ahead and tell us about it.
Yeah, it's a framework. They did analysis of thousands and thousands of youth across North America, and asking them about resiliency and the issues that they experience in their lives, where their challenges are and what's helped them. And what they found was that everyone had different language for it, but they were able to isolate what they called 20 internal assets and 20 external assets, grouped into different categories, ranging from connection to community, family life, school life, and then internal ones, sense of belonging, sense of self-worth, all these kind of ones along the way. And what the research that showed is that, and just like we're talking about, ACEs, is that people with higher assets that could identify more assets tended to be less promiscuous, be less involved with drugs and alcohol, had higher grades in school, all those kind of things. And then the same, the flip was true on the opposite end. But what I loved about their research is that what it also showed is that just because somebody has low assets doesn't mean they're doomed to fail, and just because somebody who has high assets means that they're guaranteed success. Each of us experiences life in a different from a different playing field, and if we can understand that and help people develop more assets by being more engaged in their lives, creating more opportunities for them to integrate and feel connected, we will ultimately be moving our community in a more positive direction, because we're going to be more from a mindset of asset building rather than deficiencies. And what I really loved, and just to tie this in, to the Indigenous lens, is Dr. Martin Brokenleg's work. He wrote a book with a couple of other authors called Reclaiming Youth at Risk, and they developed a model that they called the Circle of Courage. And I got to actually see Dr. Martin Brokenleg present the Circle of Courage. And what I loved was he actually put up on the board the 4 quadrants of the circle, and he put up the 40 developmental assets, and he showed how they're linked. And it's just 2 different worldviews in seeing that, and theirs was generosity, belonging, mastery, and I can't remember what the 4th one is off the top of my head. But he was able to link those ones and show that, that the Indigenous way of knowing historically was based on asset building, and that the Western researched model just was able to highlight it, and they could integrate together.
Very interesting. Hey, have you heard this before? The Maslow's hierarchy in needs was actually developed in Gleason, eh?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So he spent quite a period of time there, and then came up with that framework. Which, man, that's like that's pretty much a universal thing, right? That everybody knows what Maslow's hierarchy is, right? So that's pretty cool.
Psychology.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I
Hey,
love that. I love that LFS. I used to work for Lethbridge Family Services, and I'll give them John Thompson, incredible credit for it. But he talks about it from the hierarchy of needs and acknowledging that there's our need for safety and self worth and belonging and love um, uh, uh, I can't remember what the fifth one is, but that it's
self-actualization, is that, did you say that one? Is that the one?
self worth, yeah, is the way that they talked about
Yeah.
it. But all of them had equal, representation, and you don't, we were able. You can, just because you have, you feel like your safety is compromised. Empowerment is the fifth one. Just because your safety is compromised doesn't mean you can't be empowered in your life. Like you've had an unsafe experience, you can still access your empowerment to do things to make yourself more safe. Or you don't feel like you're connected to, loving relationships, that you can still, find connection in your own self-worth through how you engage with your life and your inner world, and how you relate that to the outer world as well. So it's, and I really valued that. So just I like Maslow's hierarchy, but it's definitely a different lens.
Well, John is amazing. He's a lot of fun. I've had a couple really good chats with him. So, and that you probably met him because of his suicide prevention work, is where you would have met him, I would think, at LFS, right?
We worked together. We actually taught suicide intervention training together. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, when I started at Lethbridge Family Services, I worked in the outreach department. John and I worked. We actually shared an office, so I worked with him for 11 years. I ran the Building Bridges program, but I also taught suicide intervention training and did the community presentations and stuff like that with them as well.
Cool.
Yeah,
We're going to have not next week. Next week it's going to be Ralph Zentner and Erin Cool, I think her name. Yeah, Erin Cool, I believe it is. But then the week after that are two, both with Lethbridge Family Services, talking about their programs and talking about, how they, the programs they have will help help people manage, resolve their trauma they might have experienced, and move on to have better lives, kind of a thing. And so I'm looking forward to that. That'll be a lot of fun to learn more about their program. So.
And just a plug, on that, is that oftentimes in mental health, when I knew as a young person, I was often I never wanted to go see a counselor. The stigma of going and talking to a counselor, and when working in the counseling field, it gave me a different lens to look through. But I know that when I went through major experiences in my life, finding somebody that you can relate to and that can help you process through it, that is not that's your objective lens, your objective reflector for you. It's definitely been. I would encourage everybody to, if they have the opportunity, to spend some time with the counselor, just to see where they're how they can grow, how they can become better, more holistic human beings.
Yeah, I know. I was chatting with some counselors once, not that long ago, but basically they were talking about their counseling sessions, like when they go for counseling. And I'm like, oh yeah, that would make sense, right? They want to, they're having this, they can't see the world as it is from their perspective. They need somebody from outside of that to say, wait a minute, did you think of this, right? So I have been a very vocal advocate for using, like, as an example, I market employee benefit plans. I'm an employee benefit specialist, right? So I help folks set those plans up. And when I'm in front of an employee group talking about it, I'm just telling them, hey, use your employee family assistance plan. It's, even if you don't have a current problem, if you know something in your life, an area you want to improve, use it. Use it as a personal development tool, right? You don't have to wait till there's a problem. Do it now. Absolutely. And anyway, and I do that. I max out mine just to go and use it for that purpose. Like, what can I do today that would make tomorrow or next week or next year better, right? So what could I change, right? So yeah.
And I think you hit on something really key there, Alan, is, that's being proactive in our lives rather than reactive. And as a society, how we've been conditioned to deal with our major social issues is we've had to be reactive rather than invest in what could be proactive and help our communities be, deal with this before it becomes the issues that we have to face. That was one thing about working with high risk youth, was you're dealing with individuals sometimes that have went through lots of challenging experiences, and I loved it. I mean, I love being in that world, but I always said, like, wouldn't it be great if we had the supports in place to help the families, to help the schools, ensure that the issues that these individuals were having could be mitigated far earlier without it becoming problematic in their experience. And that would, I think, would definitely alleviate a lot of stress and strain in our medical system, in our well, I mean, just across the board. People are more feel more connected to themselves. They're more willing to ask for help, and they're also living more healthier, productive lives.
Yeah. And that's one good thing about COVID, I think, is we're all kind of, and the awareness now that we're all in the same boat, right? My individual health and your individual health has a bearing on our collective health that we all enjoy, right? We are connected, whether we like it or not, we are. So
I really like I saw an analogy though, just on that one is we're all in the same storm. That a lot of us exist in different boats, and you have some people that are in a little tugboat, and some people that are on massive yachts, and some people that are trying to stay dry in a little bucket, and that's what the sad reality that we have to acknowledge and face is that even though the storm is we're all present for it, that how it impacts people disproportionately, especially that are in poverty or in challenging scenarios, that it disproportionately affects them.
Definitely so. Yeah.
Right? Because it's the pandemic, of course, it's impacted every single one of us in unique ways that are real for us. But to empathize and understand what that means for people in different scenarios that have it less well off than what we maybe have.
Yeah, for sure. Folks that were families that were kind of on the edge before, man, now they're treading water like crazy, right? Because that's the reality of their situation. But for some, man, if your income is pretty much assured, or it's going to stay, close to what it is now, and you're healthy, and if you have an opportunity to work remotely, well, you're like in a pretty good place. All of a sudden, you got a whole bunch more time on your hands than you had before, and if you use that time like to do something that's going to make your life better, whatever it is that I need, kind of a thing. If it's more exercise, if it's more meditating, if it's more study, if it's more whatever that helps you to live a better life, like, hallelujah, this is a real good time. But understood that a lot of people are having way tougher times too. So yeah, I think of with our victim services unit, I'm involved in a victim services unit, and we know that our call numbers have reduced. And why they have reduced, that doesn't say there's less. That means that the people who are being abused and the abuser are in the same house together more than they've ever been, right? Kids aren't going to school, dad's not going to work, kind of a thing. Man, so it's a really, really tough time now for little people like that, for sure.
For sure. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. But where we're talking before, if we can move back, if we can go back and we could, there's people who have horrendous things happen in their lives and they have these amazing lives afterwards, right? That they can do that. But I'm sure they would have had even more amazing lives if they didn't have to get over top of all of the trauma that they'd experienced, right? So, you talk to some people and say children are born artists, children are born geniuses, children are born to love, children are born, all of these things. And then if we could maintain how we were born initially, maintain and build on that, and just have the trauma we need. The trauma, like if you fall off your bike when you're trying to learn it, that's going to hurt. So you're really going to stay focused the next time, right?
Yeah,
or, those kind of things. That's the kind of the pain that is necessary to learn lessons. But beyond that, I don't think we want to have them have anybody have unnecessary pain and suffering, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I very much agree with that. It's I had somebody say one time that we're born, we're feeling machines, and it's the 8-letter F word that we're not allowed to talk about in society. But that's all of us experience, a wide gambit of feelings, and being a feeling machine, we have experiences that are always happen around us. And when something is present in front of that, like traumas or anything like that, that's that how we express it, how that impacts us on an energetic and, how on brain development is so significant, in how we can, how we process through life, so catching these things earlier and earlier, I think is just going to be healthier for our society.
Yeah, no kidding. I know I've been thinking about this a lot, and I asked a question recently. We're a part of as well ACEs Connection. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's like 50,000 people are part of this ACEs Connection, and so we've created a chapter for Alberta, the Alberta ACEs Connection, called the Alberta Champions for Children. What a surprising name, right? But anyways, we called it that, and on there I just posted the question. I said, all right, almost all of the trauma that exists is because a man has beat or raped a woman or child. That's 98% of it, or whatever the number is. It's huge. What causes that? What gets it where a man would lay fists on a woman or a child, or rape a woman or child, right? And their thing was the answer they gave, because that's going upstream, right? What does that person need to prevent that from happening, as I see it, right? What does that mom who's pregnant need in terms of supports to keep her and her baby healthy, and maybe not associate with somebody who is of that want that they're going to beat or hurt them? Yeah. So, and their thought was, it was mostly about how they grew up in terms of that strength and power is what mattered. And if you take whatever you can take. This is how it works, kind of a thing, right? And okay, I can kind of understand that. I didn't have any idea, so that makes some sense. If that's the way you're taught, if you're bigger and stronger, you take whatever you want, and you don't have any feelings and you don't have empathy. That's for losers and weak people to have feelings and empathy, right? So yeah, it's sad.
Well, and the influential adults that are around us as children, ultimately they become the voices that are in our head as we're older. The criticisms or the strengths that we internalize, and so ensuring that that those voices are positive and encouraging, rather than deficit focused, or trauma focused, is so much more helpful for an individual's self-worth as they get older. I look at the first 10 minutes of the day, the last 10 minutes of the day, and raising a beautiful young daughter. It's those times are full of as much love and connection as possible. So that's how we start our days, and that's how we end it. And we go through lots of challenges, but to acknowledge and appreciate that, as a young person, that just feeling that somebody cares about you, that they appreciate you, they see you, they respect you, they love you. Man, that's you go to bed. You can go to bed and have a good night's sleep on that. Which is nice. Yeah. But and you're a traveler as well, and and this is something I always used to teach around is that youth, we have all these behaviors and we end up punishing behaviors, and yeah, of course behaviors need to be corrected, but behind every behavior is a feeling, and to acknowledge what that feeling is, why that feeling exists, and how can we move through that feeling in a healthier way is extremely important. And especially in raising children, I love this connection. As a traveler, you've traveled around in different places. Am I correct with that, Alan?
Little bit. You're the traveler, man. I've probably traveled 1/10 of what you have.
I thought you did a little bit with through Rotary. So, nope. But if you can imagine, you travel to a country where you don't speak the same language, and you need some of your basic needs met. You have to use the bathroom. You're thirsty. How do you get your point across if you can't communicate verbally with somebody? And from my perspective, the answer is that you act it out. If you really have to go to the bathroom, you act out that there is a physical need that I need to do. And if I'm thirsty, I'm gonna make sure that they know that that's exactly what it is. And I think about that from a children's perspective is children aren't born into this world with the language and the understanding of the feelings that they're experiencing. They're just experiencing the feeling, and they're releasing it in the way that they know how. And and so the importance of getting to the part of the feeling and helping them process through very difficult emotions. Because I don't believe there's any such thing as a negative emotion. There's difficult emotions. I mean, anger and grief and sadness. I mean, those are powerful feelings, but that doesn't make them wrong or that we shouldn't feel them.
No.
When we feel angry, we should feel angry. There's a reason we feel angry. But what we do with that anger is what we need to teach people. Is that there's a moment in between my feeling and my behavior that will change how I choose to deal with this. Taking and those are I mean, you talked about it earlier. Everybody has different ways, but some people it's deep breathing, some people it's meditation, some people is just leaving the space for a little bit. But those kind of moments and helping people and parents especially learn that rather than punishing the child for having these expressions, is helping them process through the feelings, and that's strength based rather than deficit focused. And that's where I think is, if we can again shift how we look at children, how we look at development, it'll just help us parent better. It'll help us as a community deal with social issues better, and then ultimately be healthier as a society.
Hey, you remember you briefly talked about self-talk, right? You mentioned about self-talk, and I don't know how long ago I did this. I think it was probably about 8 months ago, but I love this. I just made a decision that has markedly improved my self-talk. Because we all have times when our self-talk is not very positive, right? We drop a cup and oh, you asshole, what were you thinking? That kind of thing. So my decision was this: I am my favorite human being. I am my favorite human being. I'm not saying I'm better than Trevor Brown. I'm saying I'm my favorite. Trevor should be his favorite. Corolla should be her favorite. Yep. And then there's no comparison. It's just I'm my favorite. If I'm my favorite, how would I talk to my favorite human being? It's going to be gentle correction when needed. It's going to be encouragement. It's going to be, yeah, you got this. Like, all right, okay, you didn't quite get it the first time, try again. Like, that kind of thing. So anyways, I found that has been a tool to improve my self-talk that I love. So
absolutely. I think that's great. I mean, it's the one relationship that we're born with, and it's the last relationship that we have in life is our relationship with ourselves. So we might as well make it as good of a relationship as possible, and it's those little things. That's a behavior that, it doesn't matter how old you are, you can learn, to change that habit, and absolutely. It's, working with young people, there's often, those negative thought processes that come up really quickly, and to just see that who you are is awesome, and it's fun spending time with you, and fun spending time with me, and if you can really recognize that, it's I agree with you. It's definitely helps you in processing through your experiences and making sure you're in a better space.
Yeah, and if you as well, so if you value yourself to the degree you can value yourself, you can value others and also be of value to others. I think it's kind of three ways kind of thing with the value. So
yep. And actually, just because we're both in Rotary, Rotary's motto, service above self. It's one thing. I don't know if you remember me when I first came as a young individual, wanting to challenge everything. Is one thing that even just in that saying, I always said, but without self there is no service. Is that the importance of taking care of ourselves, and that's emotionally, mentally, but also financially as well. Is being able to do what you can in your power to better your life, so that you can provide service to others as well. And that's something that it's more of a reciprocal flip for me. Is why if you go into any mental health presentations, they all talk about self-care, self-care. Take care of yourself, find things that help you process, help you move through your experiences. And if you can't, ask for help, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with asking for help.
Yeah, exactly. My self-care has got pretty amazing now. I got an amazing self-care routine, but I don't want to tell you about that. This isn't all about me, right? So, but Trevor, when you were talking about traveling, I got to tell you this story. I just found this out, I think it was Monday. There's this black man that was when he was a little boy. His dad was in like a U.S. government type posting thing where he traveled all over the world. So this young boy goes and he goes to Egypt, and he goes to the Saudi Arabia. He goes all over the world, and he meets all these people, and all of his friends, all of the kids that he grows up with, they're different colors, different races, different languages, right? It's like no big deal, right? This is common, right? So then he comes back to his father gets a posting in the United States. So he comes and takes a posting here, and the some of the kids said, "Hey, you want to be part of our scout troop?" And so, "Oh, okay, sure, I'll be part of the scout troop." So he's in the scout troop, and as they're going down the street having their little parade, like people are throwing stuff, and he doesn't realize that they're throwing it at him, right? And their bottles are bopping off him, and cans are like, and he's like, why are they throwing stuff at the scouts? I don't understand, right? And then the scout mums and such came around him to kind of protect him from the people who were throwing stuff at him. And it's just like, he didn't understand even what happened, right? He had never had this experience before, right? And so they had to explain to this little boy, well, this is racism. And they said, they're throwing stuff at me because of my skin color. Like, and you can imagine how incredulous he was, especially from being all over the world. So anyways, this guy, he's a black blues guy. He's the same age as me. And Davis, what's his? Anyways, he goes to Ku Klux Klan clubs to ask them that question. How can you hate me if you have never met me? And so he has these amazing conversations with these like racist people. And many of them, this is the first time they've ever met a black man, right? And it's like, they meet him and say, "Oh, geez, you're like pretty much like me," right? It's just like, it's such a shocking thing. But his approach, he puts himself in harm's way to have these conversations. But he's had, I think it's been 20 or more of the Grand Wizards, the Imperial Wizards, whatever the hell they're called, like give him their robe and hood and such, that they're out.
Wow.
Because just from having a conversation with a black man and meeting a black man, and his role, what he's trying to do is just overcome this ignorance, right? Like, hey, I'm same thing, right? So yeah.
Well, and I think that story just points out that that's a learned behavior.
Definitely.
We're not born with that, and as a society, in whether that's from a family, from the family unit, or from the communities that we are brought up in, or even from the greater societal systems that are in place, that those are learned. It's what we're taught, or what people have been taught for a long time, and why it's something that we have to start to break that cycle. That's us challenging ourselves to just become better human beings. And it's a hard process. It's hard to acknowledge for people that you've been brought up in a certain lens, that maybe the behavior or the belief system might not be right or healthy, or bringing you value in your life, and that but that's where us as other community members, and I think your story right there is about showing compassion. Is that we're a very divided world right now, and I think that's really telling. But I don't think that necessarily we have to look at it as politics or religion or sides of the spectrum. It's how do we provide compassion? How do we learn to be compassionate back to each other? Rather than just be divisive.
Right. And one is an acceptance of differences, and the differences are relatively small. But like two of it is the overcoming the ignorance that you don't know. Like, I know a little bit about First Nation ways, as an example. I've been in a sweat, and I've taken a little bit of courses and read a little bit, so I understand a little bit. But your experience, way, you've done a lot of things on a bunch of different reserves, right? If you could take those experiences and kind of implant them in every person's brain in our community, we wouldn't have racism. It would end.
Well, that would be the hope, and yet, like, even appreciate the acknowledgement, but I would even say that I'm humbled, to spend a lot of the time in those communities, and that I as much as I have tried to integrate as much as possible, I know fractions of the experience and the wisdom that a lot of these cultures have. And if we learn to really listen, listen with compassion to the different cultural groups, I think we're just going to be that much better off in how we create a more equitable and inclusive society for everybody. So
Yeah.
everybody has, not necessarily equal opportunity for the same jobs, because the economy is the economy. That's the reality of living in a capitalistic system, but that everybody has as good of a starting point so that they can find, navigate their world, navigate what they want to do, and become contributing members of our community.
Yeah, exactly. And for their betterment and for our collective betterment, right?
Absolutely.
You think of a community where if we could get the whole ACEs education, ACEs prevention thing right, man, you would see health improve, like individual health improve, community health improve, huge, right?
Absolutely.
You would see relationships with their, as a spouse or as a parent get way stronger and better. Their relationship to the community gets stronger and better. Their relationship with employment gets stronger and better. Their ability to learn gets stronger and better. And I'm saying there's the research says that if you get a kid coming into the classroom and he's got like 6 ACEs, he's running at like half of his intellectual capacity. If he's got an IQ of 100, he's running at 50 because that's where he's in his brainstem, and that's not going to function the things he needs to in his neocortex, right? So, and that's just how it works. So, yeah.
And you hit on something really key right there, is that understanding the brain. We're so fortunate to be in a time in human experience that the research that's being done on the human brain, and actually give a lot of props to the University of Lethbridge and their science and neuroscience departments. They're doing phenomenal research over there. But the more that we're understanding about what goes on and the impacts of experiences, we're just we can change the way that we're doing things, and we can understand where people are at, and why, when people have traumas, why, just like you said, you go from your neofrontal cortex, into your more primal parts of your brain, and why certain behaviors come up because of that, so you hit it right on.
Well, Bruce Perry, I've been watching every damn thing he's ever said, read everything. He's like I got a bit of a man crush on Bruce Perry. I think he's so smart about this stuff. And the boy who's raised as the dog, the stories of tragedy, terrible, horrendous tragedy, and then a recovery to a normal life. It's just like, wow. I prevent the trauma first would be great, but the recovery after, even after the boy who was raised as a dog, that's an amazing transition. So, yep. Hey, this is going to be, I don't want to be, I'm going to ask this question just because I think viewers who may be potential employers that be interested in your services may want to ask this question.
Sure.
There is, some people would regard that our First Nation folks have a different conception of time than the white folks. They have a more fluid kind of perception of time. Is that a fair statement, or does that sound racist?
I think I would say the same thing as when I was in Africa as well, is that time is relative. So it's not necessarily one group or the other. I look at myself. I've always struggled with time. I try to get to places on time, and usually I'm 5 minutes late. I try as hard as I can, no matter how much. But I think that from an employment level, we have a very static model, of our, because that's what we grew up with. It's the 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, type of a work day. But I think flexibility in a workplace is valuable, and depending upon the workplace, certain employers are looking for very static types of environments, and certain employers are maybe open to transitioning into a different model. And I know, the pandemic has given us a perfect opportunity to look at this. I know us at Fifth on Fifth, when the pandemic hit, we had a lot of the infrastructure already in place to just pivot on a dime and have everybody work from home. It worked really well, and and everybody, our numbers actually went up. We were able to help more youth, even though we weren't even in the building. So it's not that changed productivity. It's just that it gave people a different way to integrate into the workforce. So I think as this as we go through COVID, it's going to challenge us to look at things like time and what we can do to accommodate a little bit more realistically with where people are at, and meet the needs of whether they're the clients that we're in the nonprofit world, the clients that we work with, or whether we're talking about the real the different parts of the business community and how they operate. It's just there could be value on both sides, to learning and listening to how we can just be more flexible.
Yeah, no, I'm the only reason I brought it up, I have a little bit more sensitivity to it. I just did another little session with that Lionel LaRoche. Do you know who he is? That
No.
anyways, his thing is about diversity in the workforce and basically awareness about cultural differences, awareness about different perceptions of how time is, that kind of a thing. And so he gives an example, like when he makes a meeting set up, and there's Canadians and there's Germans and there's Mexicans and there's Japanese at the meeting, right? The meeting's supposed to start at 9 o'clock. So the Germans are 9 o'clock. Hey, let's go, and the Canadians get there about 5 minutes later, and the Mexicans get there about 15 minutes later. And then, that kind of a thing. So it's like, it's not wrong. It's just a little bit different perception of time, and understanding that allows for better relationships so they came up with a system knowing this is how they're going to operate. Let's kind of make something that works. And they still were productive. They still made a huge difference, right? They're still being able to do that. But they, I guess, honored those differences or accommodated those differences in order to deliver the result. And I think you'll agree, diversity is an amazing thing. If we had the perspective of diversity on every decision we made, we would make the best possible decisions. That's the reality of it.
It'd be challenging conversations, but it would be the best possible scenarios.
Definitely. Yeah. Yes, I know a committee of one can make decisions really, really quickly, maybe okay decisions, but not the best decisions.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, Trevor, we're out of time, my friend. That was fun. So we'll be back next week the show is 1,000 Ways to Be a Champion for Children. Next week, it is going to be with Ralph Zentner and Eva Kuhl with about funerals, about death and children, about, how do you help kids get through those times? And then the following two are Lethbridge Family Services. So, so we're looking forward to that. And we will see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on.